Hi friend, I hope you're doing super well. So I got another gospel carrier for you. And this time it's actually two, it's a couple. And one of them was born in a town in England that was very famous for this man, Robin Hood. You've heard of Robin Hood before. Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham, right? Yeah, this man was born in Nottingham. His wife wasn't, but he was. And they also had another thing in common. That couple and Robin Hood, they both cared about the poor. So let me start off with William. So William, he was born in Nottingham. He was born into a family that, was just a working class family. The dad, early on, encouraged his son to find an apprenticeship, and he helped him to find one, and he started working in that apprenticeship. But then after a few years, the dad couldn't afford to pay the apprentice fees that he had to pay for his son to keep doing the apprenticeship. So William ends up working in a pawn shop. And when he works in that pawn shop, he really, sees a lot of people that are struggling in life. He sees a lot of people that are poor, that are pawning stuff, that are bringing stuff in of value, and then they get money for it, and then a few days later when they get paid, they buy it back. Some of them bring in their tea kettle or things like that that they really need. But they didn't have any other opportunity. And so he was touched by that. He saw the poverty that's happening in his country. And God started stirring in his heart, and he started following God. And then eventually he became a preacher. So he started preaching to the poor, but he also started preaching in the church, because in the church he got a salary and he made some money, and he did a lot of preaching to the poor because that's what he was passionate about, he was excited about. And so eventually he wanted to just preach to the poor and wanted to just do evangelism, but the church wasn't allowing him to do that. And then eventually he resigned and decided, I'm not gonna be a full-time pastor in the Methodist church. Instead, I'm gonna go as an independent and just start preaching to the poor directly. And there was the cycle going on with the poor. So the poor lived in areas of the city that was mainly poorer areas, those specific areas almost. And in those areas, you could see there were places that sold alcohol. And the problem was that often the dad would make some money with the job, and then he would go and spend the money on alcohol and didn't bring it home to support their family. So the wife and child were struggling. That brought up a whole other series of issues, in the family. It could bring up violence and all other kinds of things like that. The mom was maybe sometimes forced into prostitution because of there's no money to support their child, to support their family. So it affected a lot of things, and the poverty kept the people in a cycle. And alcohol was a big problem in that. So William and Catherine, after they got married, had this passion to really do something about that. So they started preaching, they started sharing, but they also wanted to help the people, not just hey, now you're got salvation, now keep going in that poverty lifestyle. No, they wanted to help them to really change their life fully around. And God gave them this idea of an army. An army has structure. An army has ranks. So you would be in that structure, and you could work your way up in those ranks. So when you are joining an army, you could improve over time by putting effort into it, right? And so when people that were before in a lifestyle that was really struggling and troubled with alcohol would join, he would give them a role. He would tell them okay, from now on, you're going to start preaching there. You're going to start sharing with the poor in that area. And so they started to have a role in their life. and started to do that. So slowly, it started to turn things around, and people started joining the Salvation Army. And it kept growing and growing and growing. But the problem on that was the alcohol vendors, they weren't very happy about that. Because the more people that joined the army, the less people would buy their alcohol. So it would hit their business. So they ended up like stirring up people against the Salvation Army. And so they were often violently attacked. So it wasn't easy doing open air preaching and sharing the gospel, because oftentimes stuff was thrown at them and they were sometimes seriously hurt. But they kept preaching, they kept sharing the good news. And more people joined. And what's interesting, the approaches they had, they wanted to really reach the people. And so they used music. So they started having a band. And the band played the tunes that were played in the pubs, so that were famous folk songs. And they would change the lyrics and would sing those songs with Christian lyrics. And people would come along. And they kept marching through towns and then inviting people to their sharing events. And people were touched. And then the Salvation Army kept growing, and they started building like a social platform more to help people out of poverty and give them like some kind of foundation where they wouldn't be like in that cycle as much. To a level where they were really caring about their health. So there was like I think they were making matchsticks at the time. I'm not 100% sure. But the way they were made, it was really not good for people. Like it was actually affecting their health in a bad way. And so he came up with a way that like they would be produced in a healthier way. I think it was more expensive, but he was like, we'll do it the right way. And they did it, and they started building things like that. And so he really helped people also with jobs. And then eventually the Salvation Army started expanding all over the world. So they sent people over to other places, and they started preaching. And then in the army itself, there were ranks. So you would get in and you would be the lowest rank, and then over time you would higher and higher and higher. And so in that, there was also like an encouragement for the people to really step into and like to really give their best. And that reminds me actually a bit like of the background he's from with the Methodist Church, because Wesley also put a lot of like structure into the church, like for people to grow in their faith and to practice things. And William took a lot of those into the Salvation Army as well. You can see it there. And so he kept sharing, and she kept sharing, and both of them were preaching and living their lives and raising their children in the middle of helping the poor. And they were also always dependent on God. They never acquired riches for themselves. They always made sure to give what they have to help the poor. Of course, they had a living. They needed to live too. But they always used their things to help the poor. That was their heart. And it was amazing, like for a long time, they had a lot of pushbacks from many people, whatever reforms they were pushing through. But then, by the time they passed, people loved them all over the place. Not just the Salvation Army people, but many people in the country. Because they saw the good that God did through them and how things really turned around. At the memorial service, the streets were lined with people left and right. So many people came like as at a memorial for a king or a queen. William and Catherine were kind of like a king and a queen to many people. Because they helped so many people. Because they were faithful to what God called them to do. And then the streets at their memorial service were lined with people from all backgrounds. And I read a story that the queen was actually there, and she was standing next to a poor person. And they were both mourning the loss. Isn't that powerful? You know, God used that couple to touch many lives. And the Salvation Army is still touching many lives to this day. And their heart was not just social services, but the message of salvation. They wanted to bring people into the kingdom. That was the heart. But then also help them and bring the kingdom to this earth by helping them out of poverty and helping them to get on their feet. What a powerful message. We need that in today's world too. Right? You know, I want to encourage you to step into the things that God is calling you to do. You know, I believe William kind of saw poverty around him, and Catherine, and then they decided, hey, we want to do something about it. What is sticking out to you? Where there's change needed, or where people really have to hear the good news? Things that really pull on your heart and that really touch you deeply are sometimes the things God calls you to be the answer to. So I want to encourage you, just pray about it. I'm not saying all those things are always from God, but pray about it. And ask God to really show you clearer how you can step into those areas, or how you can keep going in those areas in the right way. And then step into them. And see how God will use your life to touch many lives through it. So God, I just want to pray, first of all, thank you for the lives of William and Catherine Booth and the Salvation Army and how it touched so many lives to this day. It's powerful. And I want to pray, Father, like that you stir in our heart, that you show us the things that are stirring in our heart, where we see an injustice, where we see things in this world where you want us to step up for, where you want us to bring salvation to, the good news. Guide us there, Father. Help us to do that. And show us those places so we can make a difference there with the things you call us to do. And give us perseverance. Give us strength to stay, even if we get opposition. And help us to run the race till the end, like Paul said. Run it till the end. Father, use our lives to bring glory to your name and to touch the lives of people in this world. Thank you. We love you, we love you, we love you. And in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. All right, friend, have a blessed week. And if you want to read the story of William and Catherine Booth, there's one in the Christian Hero series, Christian Heroes of History. And there's another one, it's called Fire, something with fire. I'm going to put it in the link. But read the book, it's super encouraging. And I promise you will be inspired. God bless you, friend. Bye.